Morning, everyone. So, yeah, as Natasha says, I'm Hayley Skivington. I'm head of product at Oleeo, and I'm delighted to be here again. So, thank you to Natasha and IHL for having me back to talk. And I'm also delighted that Jonathan is here to join this webinar with me today. So, it's a really packed agenda. We've got a lot that we want to get through. So I'm just going to jump straight in and crack on. Fingers crossed, the first poll works. So nice, easy one. Just, are you harnessing the full potential of talent pools today? So I can see lots of no's, lots of no's coming in. So. Perfect. Okay, so just want to talk about a little bit of the market challenges, and then that'll lead nicely into kind of why talent pools and talent communities are becoming so important. And it's hard to believe that we're already, a couple of months into 2024, but actually the turbulent market conditions just really aren't showing any signs of significant improvement. One of the key things that we're finding is this demand for talent is actually at a record high. And this is something, again, I'd really love there to be some chat about is, are you experiencing that real challenge when you're looking for talent? It's something that I've personally been experiencing. I've got a role within my team at the moment, and actually the volume of candidates coming through is really, really high, but the candidates with the right skills is actually a bit like finding a needle in a haystack. Identifying those skills and really pulling those out is quite difficult. There's, like I say, there's an abundance of talent in the market at the moment, but getting those skills right is something that I personally have found quite challenging as a hiring manager most recently. So I'd be really interested to see if that's something that I think you're struggling with as well, as recruiters. Now, this is a conversation that I'm having more and more often, is around this internal mobility and agile workforce planning. I'm finding that people are actually really trying to do that forward planning and really understand the skills that they need now, tomorrow, and much further into the future. And actually being able to pinpoint and identify the skills that you already have, as well as the skills that you're going to need, is becoming more and more critical to organization success. Now, an area for me that I believe lots of organizations are really struggling with is actually being able to access that information, being able to understand the skills that are available to them, and equally really understanding the skills that those candidates have as they're coming through the door. So again, if this is an area that you're struggling with, you've probably got an abundance of data, but can you access it and can you actually utilize it in a meaningful way to help with your recruitment efforts? And from talking in the market, talking to our clients and even our prospects, and it's analyst season for us, so we're speaking to lots of analysts at the moment. We're still finding those trends that we had towards the end of last year. Now it's really about doing much more with less. Those budgets are getting even tighter. They're getting squeezed even further than they have been previously. So how can you continue to bring in the right talent for your organization when the budget and the freedom to go out and bring in those candidates is getting tighter? Candidates' expectations continue to rise. And if anybody saw my last webinar, I really kind of spoke into the fact that actually their expectations are getting higher and they're feeling more and more disappointed with the process and the interactions that they're having with organizations as they're going through recruitment cycles. And then DE&I, which is a key area, and I know throughout the conversations we had last year, it's becoming even more important. But again, it has to be more than a rhetoric. It really has to be core and focused within all of your processes to really make a difference. And we're finding that candidates are actually interested and want to understand DE&I processes as part of understanding organizational culture. So how can you build a solid foundation for talent pools and talent communities? For me, these are kind of 4 key steps that you really should be thinking about before you embark on really starting to embrace talent pools and talent communities. Number 1, as with, I would say, any process change or protocol change within an organization, it's important that you get the buy-in from everybody. This will help to set you up for success. If people are committed to really starting to understand the talent and to communicate consistently, this will make you more successful when you're trying to build those talent communities. And really put the work in to understand your needs. Where is it that you're really struggling the most? Is it volume of candidates? Is it getting the right skills? Is it identifying skills effectively? Is it communicating your culture? Or do you find that you're able to find, excuse me, candidates with really strong skills for your organization, but culturally you seem to be rubbing up against them, and actually your churn rate of candidates is creeping up because there's a mismatch within those values. But also making sure that you look for technology that is going to meet your needs. So by really understanding your challenges, you can find the technology that can work with you to kind of really overcome those challenges quickly, demonstrate that quick ROI that everybody needs to be able to do. But for me, it's also about making sure those companies that you work with for your technology, there is an alignment with your culture, so that you're able to have a really open and collaborative way of working with your technology providers, and that they understand the challenges that you're facing and can help and support you with the right technology that's appropriate. And then in terms of your engagement strategy, make sure that you're able to collaborate with the wider teams in your organization. Making sure that you've got the right content, the right tone of voice, you're able to pull on the branding profiles, the EVPs, the DE&I policies to really demonstrate that culture, so that when you are working with your candidates, even your passive candidates, you're able to clearly articulate who you are as an organization, so that they have a very clear picture of who they're engaging with when it comes to making the decision about their next role. And then 4 kind of key strategies for me about making sure that once you've got your technology in place, that you're able to really effectively drive it forward. And these are just kind of 4 strategies that I think can really help organizations to understand the values of talent pools really quickly and actually start to utilize them in a meaningful way. So number 1, making sure you're staying engaged with those passive candidates as well as those active candidates. Think about the type of communication that you can send them, so they're staying up to date of what's happening within the organization or even the industry. So when there is a suitable role, your brand has still remained at front of mind. They've not disappeared. They're not kind of scratching their head thinking, I can't remember who these guys are, or what was that role, or who did I speak to. They remember, and they've still got a really good experience. Make sure when you're looking at your talent pools that you're able to really effectively segment them. And that can be based on skills or experiences or even job preferences, so that you're able to make sure that when you do communicate, it's highly relevant communication. You're not talking to them about accountancy roles when they want a sales role, that you really understand them and what they're looking for. And that can make a real difference, because candidates will feel like you care. They will feel like you understand what they're looking for, and that puts you on the front foot when it does come to there being roles available moving forward. Make sure your data policies are up to date. Seems a straightforward one, but it's amazing how many people can slip up on these kind of things. Making sure you contact these candidates on a regular basis. Do they still want to be part of the talent pool? Do they still want to be receiving communications from you, so that you've always got that up-to-date information? But you can also encourage them to keep their profiles up to date as well by doing that. Have they got any new skills? Have they completed any qualifications since they last applied with you? All of that can really help to make sure that your talent communities are as up to date as they possibly can be. And I say it in every webinar, but really understand what's happening, understand your data, and look at it and look at ways to improve. How can you move forward, what else can you be doing to really drive the effectiveness of any talent communities that you build? There's a number of key benefits when looking at talent pooling. Number one, you've got that live candidate database. You're not always having to go out for net new with roles that come up. If you utilize your talent pools effectively, you'll be able to look at those candidates first, engage with candidates that are already warm for your organization, rather than always having to try and go out for net new. You'll drive that better candidate experience. They want more than ever. So by keeping them up to date, and just that consistent communication can make a real difference to their experience. You can improve diversity in hiring. By looking purely at the skills in that initial sifting phase, you can really help to improve your diversity of your hires. You can reduce your time to hire, not going out for net new all the time. You understand your candidates, you understand the talent that's available to you. Can really shorten that time to hire. Can reduce the cost of hire as well, which is something with shrinking budgets that we're all having to look at more and more frequently. But you've also got that list of passive candidates that you can tap into when needed, as well as your active candidates. So some really strong benefits around driving talent communities. So how can you identify and attract top talent? So in order to have strong talent pools, you need to be able to bring in the strong candidates right from the start. So just some thoughts here for you really on how to do that. So find the technology that unblocks your bottlenecks within your process. As recruiters and talent acquisition specialists, building personal relationships is key. So by utilizing tools that free up your time, you can really focus in on building those strong personal human relationships that actually people really do remember as part of the recruitment process. But by utilizing data-driven automation, you can also make significant improvements to your sifting process. So, I touched on a personal experience of mine quite recently. There was 100+ applications from one role. And the thought of having to kind of go through those CVs manually would fill me with dread. So to anybody that's still having to do manual sifting processes, I really feel for you, because it's quite a daunting experience. So make sure you're looking at the tools that can really help improve that sifting process. Really improve consistency in how candidates are being screened at the very first stage, and really help you to drive and create talent pools based on qualified candidates for the skills that you're looking for. But you can also start to look at technology to help you automate assessment as well. So there's lots of different tools out there. Look at ones that can actually analyze candidate answers. If you've got a range of standard questions, that people do within the application process, look at the tools that can analyze their answers and identify when they're demonstrating the key skills that you're looking for within your organization. Look for tools that can signpost and say, yes, we believe this is a good answer. This is a good way of demonstrating that they understand teamwork or have strong communication skills, or whatever the skill is that you're looking for, so that you're able to move through those assessment processes much more quickly. It's flagged for you. You can agree or you can disagree with the answer, but it saves a lot of time in that manual reading and getting application form blindness, where you're seeing the same kind of answer over and over again. It can become increasingly difficult to identify the strong from the not so strong. So looking at tools that can help you at every stage of the process can really improve the quality of your talent communities and your talent pools. Make sure you measure your success. So, strategy needs to be two-way. So by understanding your data and being able to create reports for measurement against that strategy can really help you to understand what's happening within your processes. Making sure that you are continuously improving and moving forward. Processes don't stand still, and actually the way candidates apply all the skills that you're looking for are always going to flex. So by understanding that data in a lot of detail, you're able to identify new bottlenecks very quickly and look at the ways to unblock them. You know, I work in product, so I always talk about iteration, and it's certainly the same when it comes to understanding what's working within your processes. Take an agile approach and accept that you are going to have to do changes throughout, and by having those numbers, you're able to do that much more readily, and with less resistance than if you don't have that data available to you. Do you measure the effectiveness of your talent pools today? I suspected based on the first poll as well, so there's lots of no's in there.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the keys, and I'm sure it will come up in the Q&A, getting that access, and then being able to measure the effectiveness is what can make the difference. So perfect. Okay, so I am delighted to now be handing over to Jonathan. So Jonathan, for the past 7 years, has been working hard to try and change businesses' talent strategies by building talent acquisition expertise with strategic thinking and business goals. He's dedicated to crafting compelling employer brands and fostering transparent cultures to connect organizations with top-tier talent. His passion lies in creating bespoke hiring strategies that drive tangible financial and cultural results, thriving on challenges and delivering impactful solutions. So, morning, Jonathan.
Thank you,
Absolutely
Hayley.
delighted to have you here, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your perspective on all things talent communities.
Wonderful to be here as well. So I will click and share my slides. Can you see those? Yep, excellent. That's good. So yeah, I'm going to kick off with I'm going to start talking really about how we started to build a talent community at Talend Software, which was my previous organization that I was working. A very quick sort of introduction. I know Hayley just gave a bit of an introduction to myself as well. So I've spent the last really sort of 17 years within the sort of talent and culture world, whether it be on recruitment agency side, and the last 7 years spent internally. I work globally across building talent pools and also really sort of building strategies around how does the talent organization build a seat at the table from a data perspective. So really starting off with the question, what is a talent community? So I see talent communities coming really predominantly from 3 different areas. So you have your nurtured basis, which is really those candidates that you're going out to passively, looking at sort of engaging with and starting to build relationships with, maybe when we don't have a role even open and things like that. So especially this is a really key point to be able to do when times are quiet, when some companies here may not be hiring. We get a lot of people going, well, what am I meant to do? Really, this is the basis point of when you should be building your nurtured candidate pools. Applicants, I know Hayley spoke quite a lot there about the candidate experience and actually how building talent communities can build a really good candidate experience as well, but also really what fosters great talent communities is by having a great candidate experience. And I think it's really difficult to build communities without having that cornerstone sort of set up. Alumni, a lot of people, when they think about talent communities, it's just those candidates that you are engaging with, those candidates that are going through the process that maybe didn't quite hit the mark at the time, or those times which we all hope that we have 3 or 4 candidates come through the process and we go, oh, I wish I had 3 roles or 4 roles to hire all these folks that we've got in the process right now. Alumni is a really good part of your talent community as well, because those are people that maybe move on to look at their growth from a personal perspective, trying to bring them back once they've hit those goals or whatever it may be. I know there's a lot of layoffs happening in the markets over the last 2 years. That's been an ongoing sort of conversation subject. So keeping engaged and making sure that the exit program is also really as positive as it can be, that then potentially as businesses and markets turn around, your alumni can be a really key point. One thing that I do want to highlight here is I really, when I think about talent communities, when we're speaking predominantly with hiring managers and teams, interview teams, removing the terminology of pipeline and benching, and one sort of key point I hate is keeping people warm, doesn't really, I think the expectation of leading a talent community, keeping people warm is really not a great way to word it, especially when you're communicating internally. And these are terms that I would probably shy away from when getting buy-in from the business, because the conception when it comes to a sales process, if we're talking salespeople, pipelining and benching, means that there is never any golden tap on the wall of, oh, we want to go and get candidates, let's open the tap and the great candidates will flow. Building a talent community is really about making sure that the timelines match between two parties, A being the employer and B being the candidates. Really looking at how do we get people engaged through conversation. One of the good stories that I always sort of bring up here is salespeople. When we used to hire salespeople, we used to hire them consistently in Q4 and Q1, which is the latter part of the year and the beginning of the year. And really what we found was, when are salespeople most busy? Q4, Q1. So how likely is a great salesperson going to be to pick up the phone? If you've built a relationship, you built a community with those salespeople, we found that actually they are a lot more likely. I think the data showed about 45 to 50% more likely in my past roles where I've looked at this. They are 45 to 50% more likely to respond, pick up the phone and have a conversation with you when they are busy as well. So really key point in terms of the language that we're using. So when we talk about building a talent community, really looking at where do we start with? Sorry, where do we start with? Hayley spoke a little bit there about, in terms of showing the sort of steps that you take in terms of building a community. It really sort of starts for me of defining why. What is the purpose for the talent community? And we talk about, quicker hires, less cost, building a community that is talking about your employer brand or your company's brand, because it's not just necessarily attached to your employer brand, it's also your business marketing as well. Choosing the right platform is a key point. I think, obviously before you can obviously get funds for the right platform, you do need to obviously get the buy-in side of things. But choosing the right platform. Are you looking at an SMB tool? Are you a mid-market company? Are you a large enterprise business? Reviewing what are the purposes, what's the data you want out of that? How do you want to find those people in the future? So choosing the right platform is key. And creating compelling content. What are you going to share with these people? A salesperson isn't necessarily interested in the fact that you're working with a new software set, a new programming tool or whatever it may be. Well, they're interested in big wins, investment in the business. Just also to the point of, R&D people are not necessarily interested in which customers you're working with. They want to know what tools they're going to be working with. So making sure that your content is attached to that as well. Engaging regularly. There is a point of over engagement, but there is also too little engagement. We found sort of really about 3 to 6 months in line with GDPR, really keeping people engaged is probably the sort of timeline that we'd look at. So when we start to look at how you are developing your content, what are you sharing with these people? It's an incredibly difficult thing to get your recruitment team and your hiring managers to focus purely on creating content, and marketing really are there focused on marketing the business to potential prospects. So really generating your content through your employee cycle, looking at what they're sharing on LinkedIn or on in podcasts or in blogs or whatever it may be, trying to get engagement through your employees, because that is the people that they're their peers, that's the content that people are going to want to be looking at. Looking at employee stories, we took a point of trying to highlight growth within the business. This falls a lot into your employer brand, but it really is central to, if you have a good community, sharing the information to them is really the key. Collecting feedback. We used to regularly survey people. How are you finding, the content? How are you finding the engagement? Would you like more? Would you like less? What type of roles? Talking about what growth points they've had. And again, having the right tool with this is really sort of key. Integrating with your recruitment team, setting the stage for recruiters to go first point. Well, actually, second point, I would say, because really your internal recruitment process should be your first go-to. Then secondly, while people are looking internally, really sort of looking at how do they go into the marketplace rather than them opening LinkedIn and doing a fresh search. Start looking at your past applicants, tracking how the interview process went previously with previous candidates, and actually understanding, did they score well? If they scored well, should we bring them in? I'll give some sort of data points on this later on. And constantly measuring and analyzing what's going on. Communities are an ever adapting and evolving process. And the reality is, as we go through markets, as the market shifts and businesses grow, our employee community need and purpose will change as well with that. So how to gain buy-in? I think these are the two, really sort of next two slides are the ones that I really want to focus in. Gaining buy-in from people, I think, is probably the hardest thing to do. It sounds like, you go to the business and you say, hey, we can make your hiring process quicker, we can reduce costs. It sounds wonderful. And it's surprising how many people go, that's a great idea. Yeah, let's look into that. Or I don't have time to do that, especially, not only from the business perspective, but surprisingly, sometimes it's very difficult to get buy-in from recruiters because their focus is filling roles. The reality is building community does take a bit of time. It does take a bit of effort, but actually the time saved later on is huge in comparison to just continuing doing what we're doing. So showing the value, really starting what we were doing was picking out on a few key hiring managers, getting their buy-in and helping them understand, right, this is what it's going to change. We really struggle with your roles because they're hard to fill. Or from a sales perspective, as I mentioned earlier, we hire at crazy times in the year, and getting the best salespeople is not always, that's not the right time of year to be engaging with those people. So building relationships early on, being aware of your hiring process, I think is really key to getting the buy-in from hiring managers and those recruiters working on those particular roles. Understanding roles that you see that the time to fill is double or triple every other role that you're looking on. That you consistently hire on, again, I'll use salespeople or R&D as a really good example. We knew that we would hire X number of engineers per year, and you can really sort of ascertain from historical facts on that one. And the same with sales, and understanding what are your hiring cycles in terms of, again, Q1 is a busy time, there's a bit of a lull in the middle of the year, and a pickup in the end of the year. From an R&D perspective, what we found is we didn't hire that many in Q1. We hired a lot in the middle of the year, and then it sort of tailed off towards the end of the year. And we were still hiring, but it wasn't the same level of numbers in the summertime. Providing training, spending time with people. You've got to do it from a mixed approach. Some people, finding the tipping point for people. I mean, training when it comes to group training, so people can discuss as a peer group, and actually giving them the ownership of how do they want to develop the nurture program or the talent community. But also understanding, again, from a candidate experience perspective, making sure that candidates have a great experience. So at the end of the process, if you decide, right, I'm not going to hire this person, they have to leave that process going, do you know what? I'm upset that I didn't get the role, or I'm unhappy that I didn't get the role, but this is a company I really want to work with. So ensuring that you look at the data from gaining feedback from those candidates that you don't hire is probably the most important thing. We used to survey every single candidate that we didn't hire, and and the team would review every single bit of commentary from those. We asked them, would they consider a role in the future, would they, how was their experience with the hiring manager? How was their experience with the recruiter? How was their, did they feel like they could express themselves from an inclusive perspective within the process as well? And I think taking that data and taking it back to the teams and going, right, here's an area we could develop, because in turn, that will build a great candidate experience that will enable you to build really good, robust communities as well. Using those success stories, I mean, going back to showing value, picking out a few key individuals that gain the buy-in really quickly, because you will find that there will be a small pool of people that will go, do you know, I get this, I understand it, I really want to do this. Using those stories to gain buy-in from other people will help you. Looking at the right engagement tools as well. I think, this is a difficult one because it's not necessarily attached to your ATS or a CRM system. There are some amazing ones out there. And I think looking at how you're integrating those tools, utilizing LinkedIn from that perspective. Maybe it's a group on LinkedIn. We actually created an alumni group that we started getting people to share information on. Celebrating wins. I'm going to jump around on this one because I'm picking out key bits that I think are key here. But celebrating wins. I think when people celebrate wins across the business, highlighting, we were trying to highlight across our executive team, this particular, hiring manager has had success nationally. We can see the impact of their time to fill dropping, their experience, candidate experience picking up, and the cost side of things as well. So by considering all of this information, getting people on board, is sometimes a struggle, but it is probably the key thing. If you don't have buy-in, you will find it doesn't work. I mean, one key story that I always had, that I found when we built this in, especially when we went through a lull period of we weren't hiring so much, and people were like, well, I can't reach out to a talent community with no job, or I can't reach out to passive candidates with no job. And it's a case of, well, think about it from a networking perspective. We had a team that were seasoned recruiters, so a lot of them had experienced the old style networking side of things. It's just that mindset shift of, you didn't walk around a recruitment or a networking event or a job fair or whatever it may have been with a job description going, hey, I've got this perfect role for you. What you did is you asked questions. What do you want to do? What are you looking to do with your career? And you'll be surprised that when you start having those conversations with talent communities about what are they looking for, it creates almost like a competency-based conversation rather than a question and answer structure, because what you will find is that people will engage and they'll be open. And then also, what you will find is people start to engage with your brand and, will end up being much quicker hires in the future. So a few sort of key wins that we found. Now, I will sort of add a caveat on some of these. Not all of these were solely down to a talent community, but what they do, what the talent communities impacted on these were huge. We found through the nurture program that we used, the reduction of our time to fill. There were roles that were well beyond 80 days that were taking to hire. But we actually brought down those that we found through the community, those recruiters that actually adopted very early on, right, I'm going to go and, I'm going to do my internal 3 or 5 days internal only, but during that period, what I'm going to be starting to do is looking at our talent communities. And what they found was they could hire a lot quicker. People had already been through a certain amount of the process, or they were engaged with our brand. And being that point where they would they would be much quicker in sort of driving through that process. Candidate experience improvement through that survey tool. And again, these numbers are literally just the ones that we declined through the process. We struggled a little bit. We had about a 65% positive feedback. We actually improved that to 86% of people were saying, yes, I will consider a role with you in the future. Yes, I did have an engaging process. And yes, the candidate experience was good and the hiring manager experience was good. Reduction of interviews through a talent community, because what you will find is, especially if you're looking at past applicants, you will find that candidates have already been through the process. they understand the business a little bit better, so they're able to actually have those conversations and work with a hiring manager through the interview process. So you're actually not having to do so many interviews as you were in the past. Better partnership with hiring managers. I think this is one of the key takeaways for me. It's not really a measurable one, but the relationship. We went from being and I did notice Kay, who's on this call on as one of the participants, she will laugh at this. Going from order taking to being a consultant to the business. Again, putting yourself on that pedestal. Recruiters, talent acquisition professionals, whatever we want to say, we bring so much to a business in terms of data and insights from outside of the business. That is a really key point in terms of getting buy-in. If you can build a good relationship, then you are really in there as a goal point there. Reduction of attrition. Again, if you're having exciting people join the business, people feeling positive, really in reality, it's going to keep the business more engaged overall. Improvement of mobility and succession. Through our communities, we actually considered internal communities as well. What are people looking to do? What are people wanting to do in the business? And using those as part of our talent community. It's a different talent community, but it is a talent community nevertheless that you should be building as well. Hiring training, we actually found that building hiring manager training around the information and data that we were putting out of the process was really sort of a key point. Not just building a training of, right, this is what we want to do. This was a case of we were going to the business and saying, this is what we have to do, because we need to get better. The market is crazy right now. So please let's use that data and build sort of hiring training based on that. One of the best stories we had, that it was a key one that I found. Quickest hire of 2.5 hours. We found this was a role that consistently, based on the data, would take us 180 days to fill. It was a junior sales role in Germany, or German speaker, really sort of a pain role. But one of our recruiters who gained the buy-in from the talent communities and nurture program that we built ended up being able to make a hire based on somebody that we hired previously. We actually went through an interview process with somebody else. They didn't quite match, at the time, they weren't, quite as good as the other person. And really at the end, 6 months later, we opened up another role. Everyone kind of starts pulling their hair out, going, this is going to take forever. The recruiter jumped in on the community, found that person really easily, called them up, said, hey, are you still interested? Yes, I'm interested. Right, let's just make an offer to that person. So we actually made a hire that would have taken us 180 days in 2.5 hours. So last sort of final point, key takeaway, remember that building a community, it's an ongoing process. It does take time. It does, it's not something that you can flick a switch and boom, you start sort of seeing results like that. Building a community is about building the community of people that are bought into that process as well. So leveraging networks, leveraging your employees for your content, and getting buy-in from all parts of the organization is key. It can't just be run through TA. It has to be something that is a business commitment as well. If anyone has any questions and would like to connect with me, that is a QR code as well for my LinkedIn. So feel free to scan that and connect. Otherwise, I will hand back over to Natasha. Thank you very much.